11 days. That is all the time I have left to save a species, and I have already spent 3 of them arguing about wheat. My name is Ethan Hale, and until 3 weeks ago my biggest problem was a trade dispute over grain tariffs. Now I am standing in a crisis room, built into the side of a mountain, watching a wall of screens count down the hours until an empire that has never lost a war arrives at our front door. The Votheran Dominion declared war on humanity 8 days ago. I was the one who took the call. I was eating a sandwich at the time, and when their grand envoy demanded to know if I understood the gravity of the moment, I asked him if he meant now or after lunch. It became something of a joke across our worlds. People needed a joke. What they did not know is that behind that joke, every single person in this room had already been working for 3 weeks straight, because I knew the declaration was coming long before the envoy ever opened his mouth. The screen in front of me updates. Fleet contact confirmed. 11 days has become 9. They moved early. They broke their own protocol, says Laura Whitman, standing beside me with a tablet gripped so tightly her knuckles have gone pale. She is our lead intelligence officer, and in the last 3 weeks she has slept maybe 12 hours total. 800 years of formal declarations, full notice periods, honor codes older than our entire civilization, and they just threw it away. Because I embarrassed him, I say. The envoy needed to prove something, to his people, maybe to himself. An empire that has never been mocked does not know what to do when it finally is. You think that was wise? Poking a giant? I think a giant who is angry moves faster and thinks slower. I would rather fight a giant who is angry than one who is patient. General Owen Pierce steps in from the side corridor, his uniform still creased from the shuttle ride. He commands what remains of our combined fleet, a scattering of ships that would look like a rounding error next to the Votheran Armada. He does not waste time with greetings. Their lead formation crossed the outer marker 2 hours ago, he says. 40 capital ships, escort vessels in the hundreds. They are moving in a standard conquest spread, which tells me they still think this is going to be easy. Let them think that, I say. Ethan, I need more than confidence. I need a plan that does not end with our entire fleet turned to dust in the first 10 minutes. I nod, because he is right to demand it, and I walk him and Laura toward the far end of the room, where a projection hovers above the table showing the layout of Votheran fleet formations collected from 3 centuries of their previous campaigns. Every empire has a signature, even one that has never lost. Look at the pattern, I say. Every one of their 40 campaigns follows the same structure. A single command ship at the center, feeding coordination data to every other vessel in the fleet. It is efficient. It is also a single point of failure they have never needed to worry about, because no one has ever been able to touch that ship. And you think we can, Owen says. I think Laura already found the way in. Laura pulls up a data stream on her tablet, projecting rows of intercepted signal traffic onto the table. Their coordination network runs on a resonance frequency that has not changed in 200 years. Why would it? Nobody has ever survived long enough to study it. But we have been listening since Perrin's Reach, and 3 days ago, we finished mapping it completely. So we jam it, Owen says. Better, I say. We do not jam it, we speak it. If we can feed false coordination data into that network at the right moment, their ships will not know they are being lied to. They will trust their own command structure completely, because it has never failed them before. That is the weakness that comes with 800 years of winning. You forget how to doubt. Owen studies the projection for a long moment, arms crossed, jaw tight. If this fails, we lose the only fleet standing between them and every colony we have. If we do nothing, we lose anyway, I say. At least this way we choose how the fight begins. He looks at me, and something in his face shifts from doubt to grim resolve, the look of a soldier who has decided the risk is worth taking. Then we need every ship in position before they reach the second marker. That gives us 6 hours, not 6 days. The room moves fast after that. Ships reposition. Engineers work through the night rewriting targeting software most of them built themselves inside the last 2 weeks. I do not sleep. I do not think I have slept properly since the day the envoy's hologram bloomed over my desk. but there is a strange kind of clarity that comes with having no more time left to waste. Every decision becomes simple, because there is only one decision to make, and you either make it or you do not. At the 4-hour mark, I walk the length of the crisis room and find a young technician named Grace Bellamy running diagnostics on the signal array we will use to feed the false data. She cannot be older than 25, and her hands are shaking slightly as she works. "You built this system," I say, sitting down beside her. "Most of it," she says, without looking up. "There is a woman on the 3rd floor who wrote the core resonance model. I just made it work, with our hardware. Are you scared?" She finally looks at me, and there is no shame in her eyes when she says, "Yes." "Good," I say. "Scared people check their work twice." She almost laughs, and for a moment, the room feels less like a mountain full of desperate strangers, and more like a group of people who might actually survive this together. At the 2-hour mark, the Vothiran fleet passes the 2nd marker, exactly on schedule despite their early departure, because their confidence does not allow for hesitation. Owen orders our ships into their final positions, spread thin across 3 sectors, to avoid presenting an easy target for their opening barrage. I watch the tactical display and feel my pulse climbing, even though I am not the one flying into contact. "Ambassador," comes a voice over the comm, and I recognize it instantly. The Grand Envoy. He has chosen to open a channel before his fleet even reaches firing range, and I understand immediately why. He wants to see my face when his ships arrive. I answer the call from the crisis room, standing straight, arms behind my back, the same calm expression I wore the day this all began. "Envoy," I say, "you are early. I told you 11 days. "Plans changed," he says, and there is something tight in his voice now, something that was not there before. "I grew tired of waiting for you to understand what you have brought upon yourselves." "I understand it fine," I say. "I have understood it since the first day. The question was never whether I understood the danger. The question was whether you understood how little that danger frightens me." "Bravado," he says. "It will not save your species." "No," I agree. "But it is not bravado holding your fleet together right now either. It is a coordination network you have trusted for 200 years without ever once questioning it. I wonder how that trust will hold up in the next few minutes." There is a pause, and I can hear something shift in the background of his channel, voices rising, alarm spreading through his command deck. He has realized, a moment too late, that I was never simply talking to pass the time. "What have you done?" he says, and it is not a question anymore. It is closer to a demand. "Ask your fleet," I say. "I imagine they are about to tell you." I cut the channel and turn to Owen. "Now." Grace and her team activate the array. Across 3 sectors, our ships broadcast a flood of false coordination data into the Vothaliran network, timed perfectly to the moment their fleet begins its opening approach. For 800 years, that network has never lied to a single ship inside it. It does not know how to be doubted, so when it tells 40 capital ships and hundreds of escorts that our fleet has shifted position, that our strongest formations are massing in the eastern sector, when we are actually spread thin across all 3, the Vothathiran commanders do not question it. They trust the voice they have always trusted. Their fleet turns east, chasing ships that are not there in the numbers they expect, opening gaps in their formation that would never exist under normal command. Owen gives the order, and our real fleet moves through those gaps like water finding cracks in stone. I watch it unfold on the tactical display, and my chest is tight the entire time, because knowing a plan should work and watching it actually work are 2 very different experiences. Ships flare and stagger as our forces strike weak points in their spread formation. Some of our own ships take damage, drift out of formation, and for a moment, I lose sight of 2 of our lead vessels entirely, my stomach dropping until their signals reappear a few seconds later, damaged but alive. "Command ship is exposed," Owen calls out, voice sharp with focus rather than panic. "Repeat. Their command ship has lost half its escort chasing the false signal. This is our window." "Take it," I say. Our fastest ships close the distance before the Vothiran fleet can reorganize. There is no dramatic final blow, no single moment of destruction that ends the fight, because that is not how I wanted this to go, and it is not how Owen planned it either. Instead, our ships surround the command vessel, disable its long-range weapon systems, and hold position, close enough that any attempt to fire will risk their own flagship in the crossfire of debris and disabled systems around it. It takes almost 20 minutes for the rest of the Vothiran fleet to realize what has happened, that their coordination network has been feeding them false information the entire time, that the ship at the center of everything they trust is now surrounded and helpless. 20 minutes of confusion is an eternity for a fleet that has never once needed to think for itself. I open the channel again. "Envoy," I say, "are you still there?" Silence at first, and then his voice returns, quieter than before, stripped of the grandeur it carried at the start of this. "You have disabled our flagship." "I have," I say. "I could have done worse. I chose not to." "Why?" "Because a war does not need to end in ashes for one side to win it. It only needs to end. Your fleet is scattered, your command network is compromised, and your flagship sits inside a ring of ships that could finish this in seconds if I gave the order. I am not going to give that order, Envoy. I am giving you a choice instead." Another pause, longer this time. I can imagine the scene on the other end, officers looking to their Grand Envoy for a decision that 800 years of history never prepared them to make. "What choice?" he finally says. "Withdraw," I say. "Take what remains of your fleet and leave our space. In exchange, we do not pursue. We do not humiliate you further than today already has, and we open a channel for real negotiation, not a declaration shouted over a hologram while I eat lunch. And if I refuse, then your flagship stays exactly where it is until you change your mind. And every hour that passes, more of our allies arrive to see an empire that has never lost, finally sitting still, waiting, unable to move. I do not think that is the story you want written about the Vothiran Dominion. I think you would rather write a different one." The silence stretches long enough that Laura leans toward me, whispering that maybe I push too far, that pride might win over sense even now. I do not think so. I have spent 3 weeks studying this man through every scrap of intelligence we could gather, and pride built on 800 years of victory is a fragile thing once it cracks even slightly. It does not want to be seen breaking further. "Withdrawal," the envoy finally says, the word coming out heavy, like it costs him something physical to speak it. "Effective immediately." "Good," I say. "I will have my people draw up terms for real talks. Somewhere with better chairs than a hologram projector, if that is all right with you." He does not answer that. The channel closes, and across the tactical display, Vothiran ships begin pulling back from the edges of our territory, slow and staggered at first, then faster, as the order spreads through their scattered fleet. The room does not erupt into celebration the way I might have expected. Instead, there is a kind of stillness. Exhausted people staring at screens that finally show retreating enemy ships, instead of advancing ones, unsure whether to believe it yet. Owen sits down heavily in the nearest chair, running a hand over his face. Grace is crying quietly at her station, the kind of tears that come from relief rather than sadness. Laura simply stares at the display, tablet forgotten in her hand. "It worked," she says, like she needs to say it out loud to believe it. "It worked," I confirm. "You knew it would." "I hoped it would," I say. "There is a difference, even if I did not let it show." She studies me for a moment, and there is something almost like a smile at the corner of her mouth. "You really did stay this calm the entire time." "Somebody had to," I say. "If I had shown how frightened I actually was, everyone in this room would have felt it too. Fear spreads faster than any coordination network they ever built." Owen looks up at that, tired but steady. "So the whole thing, the sandwich, the calm act, all of it was deliberate." "Most of it," I say. "The sandwich was just lunch. But yes, the rest of it was deliberate. An empire that has never lost does not know how to read fear it cannot find. I made sure there was none for them to find." 3 days later, we sit across from Vothiran representatives at a proper table with proper chairs, negotiating terms that will end the conflict formally, rather than simply pausing it. The Grand Envoy himself does not attend. I am told he requested reassignment somewhere quiet, far from any species capable of asking uncomfortable questions during a declaration of war. I cannot say I blame him. Word of what happened spreads across dozens of worlds within weeks, growing a little stranger with every retelling, until the story bears only a loose resemblance to what actually occurred in that crisis room. But the core of it stays the same everywhere I hear it repeated. An empire that had never lost a war finally did. Not because it was outgunned, but because it forgot, after 800 years, what it felt like to be doubted. I think about that a lot in the months that follow, back in my office, back to ordinary matters like trade schedules and border permits, the sandwich long finished, the crisis long past. Confidence built on winning too many times becomes its own weakness eventually. It stops asking questions. It stops checking twice. Grace checked her work twice because she was scared, and that fear made her careful, in a way 800 years of victory never taught the Vothiran Dominion to be. Sometimes calm is not the absence of fear. Sometimes it is simply choosing not to let fear decide what happens next. I learned that the hard way, standing in a crisis room with 9 days left instead of 11, watching a giant learn for the first time in 8 centuries what it feels like to lose. And somewhere out among the stars, an empire that once conquered without hesitation now moves a little slower, checks its formations a little more carefully, and remembers, whether it wants to or not, the day a human ambassador finished his sandwich before answering a declaration of war.